Morning, everybody. Some of you already been to the two previous ones of these. And good morning to anybody who is just joining for the first time. Also, many thanks to David Kennedy, who's International Markets Manager of the Bord Bia, the Food Board of Ireland, for his willingness to talk to us this morning. And also, of course, to Com O'Criven and Com Halloran for their support in making it possible. This is the third in a series of 7 meetings with colleagues from Irish institutions, instrumental in the success of Irish agri-food export development. The main language of the presentations this morning will be English, and you can find the Ukrainian under the German button. Please, would you leave the microphone muted when you're not speaking? And if you have questions which occurred to you during the presentation, if you could write them in the chat, and then we'll ask them, put them to David at the end of his presentation. Briefly about myself and us, my name is Richard Moody. I'm the Agri-Trade Policy Expert on the Agri-Trade Ukraine project, funded by the German Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food. Our project supports development of agri-food export in general, and in particular to the EU within the framework of the DCFTA. As we all know, Ukraine is a hugely successful exporter, especially of grain and oilseed, but is currently attempting and working on diversifying its export portfolio to achieve various policy objectives, including the development of value chains and of rural areas. We're looking at how to improve the system of agri-food export development, both the state and non-state institutions, and are looking to learn from the best and apply relevant lessons learned to the Ukrainian situation. Last year, we visited Germany and looked at how the German system has been successful in supporting their agri-food industry in developing export. And now we're very happy to be hearing from our Irish colleagues to hear how they have managed to achieve their incredible successes, particularly in the dairy sector, but also in many other sectors as well. So at this stage, I'll pass directly over to David, who will give us his insights from the Bord Bia.
Thank you, Richard, and good morning to everybody dialed in. It's my pleasure to join you this morning to share some of our learnings from an Irish perspective. My name is David Kennedy. I'm International Markets Manager with Bord Bia, the Irish Food Board. And the Irish Food Board are an agency of the Department of Agriculture, and our responsibility is to market Irish food worldwide. So we work hand in hand with some of the other agencies who you will have met as part of this series. My direct responsibilities are for Africa, Asia, Middle East, and Russia. And my plan for this morning is to show you some of our structures and some of our export footprint to date. And I look forward to some questions at the end of the presentation. So as I mentioned, we're a state agency, and we're part of the Department of Agriculture. And our role is to act as the link between Irish food, drink, and horticulture suppliers with existing and potential customers throughout the world. We work within the remit of a national strategy for agriculture, which is known as Foodwise 2025. This is a strategy that's revised every 5 years, so we're currently writing Foodwise 2030. But the ambition when this was drafted in 2015 was that we would increase Irish exports to 19 billion, which was an 85% increase. That would increase the value add of that to 13 billion, so move out of commodity exports, and to increase the amount of that value that goes to primary production. So just as Richard mentioned around, the rural economy, our role really is to find those markets worldwide that will pay a premium for the produce we develop, so we can get the best return for our exporters, who in turn can give the best return to our primary producers, who in turn are based all over our island, and this gives us a vibrant economy across the island, rural and urban. And ambition is to create 23,000 additional jobs in the sector. So where does agriculture play in Ireland's economy? Well, it's very, very important. It's 10% of merchandise exports and 9% of employment. That might sound kind of relatively modest, but we have an economy here where we have significant pharmaceutical exports. A lot of international FDI has been invested here in sectors other than agriculture. So 10% of merchandise exports is very significant. And 9% of employment is also very significant. And that, I suppose that doesn't represent then the number of people that are employed indirectly through agriculture. So as you're all very well know, if the grain price is good in those regions where grain is produced, you've got the cafes, the bars, the local shops, the hairdressers, the barbers, all that money goes back out into the economy. People want to improve their homes. So indirect employment is very important as well. I should say that going back 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, that number would have been higher. We would have had a higher dependency on agriculture. So if you think about the Irish view on agriculture, is that most of us, if you go back 1 or 2 or 3 generations, will find farming in our heritage. So it's a very romantic and important sector to our national values. We export 85% of what we produce. So we have a population of around 4.7 million. Depending on the sector, we say you could feed 25 million, 30 million, 45 million people with the food we produce. And we have a temperate climate. So our position on the western coast of Europe means that we don't get particularly high temperatures during the summer, and we don't get particularly high or particularly low temperatures during the winter. So what that means is that we have a very temperate climate, and we have grass growth for 9 months of the year. And grass really is what underpins our agricultural output. We don't have the temperatures to produce grain, unlike the Ukraine, but we do have good temperature, good climate for grass. We have, I think, 15 international offices. So if we export 85% of what we produce, we've got to find the best customers for that produce worldwide. And to do that, we really have to be based in those offices. So we have big teams across Europe, Middle East, North America, and Asia, and have been expanding in recent years. So in the last 2 years, we've opened Tokyo and Lagos, and 2 years before that, we would have opened Singapore and Warsaw. And we have been, I suppose, my view has been that we're trying to create centers of excellence rather than new offices. So if you look at Singapore, for example, it was opened in 2016. Rather than open up an office in Manila, an office in Jakarta, an office in Kuala Lumpur, we've further resourced the office in Singapore. So we feel that that's an effective way of approaching that region with sectoral experts. I also work with a team of consultants on a project by project basis in markets where we don't have representation. And they help me find new business opportunities, deliver market intelligence back to our exporters, and to recruit buyers for events we may be running. Types of events we run are inward buyer visits, market study visits, seminars, trade missions, all of this stuff that we use to raise Ireland's reputation and to build leads for our exporters. Yeah, you can ignore this slide. In terms of Bord Bia's strategy, we want to build differentiation and win growth as a result. So if you think about building differentiation means you're moving product out of commodity into value add. So we want to ensure that we are not reliant on global commodity prices for the strength of our rural economies. And what that means is we're trying to, when we're selling dairy, I'm trying to sell value added dairy, functional dairy, move as much of our produce into non-commodity as I can. And why do we do that? It's because I want to bring Ireland's outstanding food, drink, and horticulture produce to the world, enabling the growth and sustainability of producers and processors. So that's what we're about. Find the markets, get the best price, make it a sustainable business, have consistent quality return on investment back to our producers. So we have 4 priorities that I work to deliver on that. Firstly, it's about driving success and growth in the market. And that's all the things I described there. It's our meetings with buyers. It's our promotions where a product is a retail product. It's our reputation building activities and seminars to create a demand for Irish produce. and it's the work my team does across the world. Secondly, it's insight to power growth. So we understand that for an exporter to be successful in a market, they have really got to understand that market. The more you understand about a market, about the dynamics of the market, the dynamics of trade level, at consumer level, the better chance you have to succeed in that market, because you can create your product or position your product to succeed. So what we have is a thinking house library for our industry. So if you think about any food and drink industry, and the Ukrainian one will be no different to the Irish, you've got big companies who have massive resources. But in reality, 85% of the companies we deal with don't have a marketing department, don't have a research department. So we are that. So we buy all the global trade reports, documents, databases, and we give access to those to our exporting clients. So for example, if I have an Irish whiskey company who wants to understand more about the Ukrainian beverages market, they can come to us, they can book time to physically visit our library and access all those online databases, so that when they go to try and find those right customers in the Ukraine, they're fully equipped with all the information and intelligence they need to be successful to do so. So that's a huge investment on behalf of our industry. Thirdly, we build reputation for growth. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with Ireland. We've played each other in a European Championships, which is usually a good way of getting to know each other. I think it was Shevchenko's last game. But when we go further afield, there's not a huge awareness of Ireland and what does Ireland stand for. So in Asia, when I'm introducing Ireland, people think I'm talking about Iceland or Holland. So we've got to create that reputation. So what is Ireland about? And the type of thing we like to link ourselves back to is, clean air, clean sea, clean soil. So a really natural, clean environment for producing high quality food. So we see that there's an opportunity to create a reputation for Ireland in specific markets. Our challenge is, with a limited budget and a small team, we've got to pick the right ways of doing that. So some of the things we'll do is we'll partner with key opinion leaders, authorities. Rather than spending big money on marketing campaigns, we'll look to leverage the reputation of others to build that reputation for Ireland. And fourthly, it's leading through people. I'm not sure if you can see that, it's leading through people. And that's about both investing in the quality of our team, and we have about 130 employees, but really about investing in the quality of the executives in our industry. So an example I would give of that is that we will do work to help our industry deliver strategies, to train them on, we're currently doing a lot of training on digital marketing, virtual meetings, e-commerce, all these skill sets that may not be widespread in our industry, but are required in order to succeed. So we do a lot of work on that. One of my jobs is to drive our trade mission itinerary, which really works to our building reputation and our lead generation pieces. So a trade mission is where we will take our Minister for Agriculture and a team of Irish exporters to markets worldwide. We will host reputation building seminars there to drive the reputation of Irish food. We'll invite local buyers, and we'll also host ministerial meetings. So quite often it'll be to a market where we want market access and we don't have it, typically on the meat side of things. So we would take our ministers there to engage in bilateral meetings to achieve market access so our exporters can sell. And I suppose Ukraine is somewhere where we've done some of that, but without the minister, we've done it with our veterinary officials, and we've had some market access gains in the Ukraine in recent years on beef and pig meat. We attend over 29 international trade shows in most years. This year, as you can imagine, has been slightly different. And at those trade shows, you will see an Ireland stand, and on the Ireland stand, you will find all our exporters. So you'll see they're across the world, really. If I went back 5 years ago, you'd see a map that was very busy in Europe with not so much activity across Asia or the Middle East or North America. But in recent years, we've really started to step up our presence at those international trade shows, particularly in Asia, due to the growing demand there. And I'm sure the Ukraine are seeing your exports to Asia significantly increase as well, as their demand for high quality food increases. This year obviously has been very different, and we're engaging on virtual trade missions and virtual trade shows. And we're finding some really interesting ways of working within that. There's challenges, but there's definitely things that will stick with us for the future when things turn to normal again. So when I talk about building Ireland's reputation and what does Ireland stand for, we see our USP as being the sustainable food exporter. And we know that sustainability means a lot of things to different people, and that you can't just say you're sustainable, you've got to prove it. So back in 2012, we created a program called Origin Green. And Origin Green is the world's first national sustainability program. It's independently verified, and it looks at key data points to reduce the carbon impact of our food production at farm and at processor level. So all of our farmers, 99% of our farmers are now signed up to this program. All of our companies that we represent must be signed up to this program. If they're not signed up to Origin Green, they can't avail of the services that we provide. And the objectives of it are to, increase market access and value for our companies, to deepen our membership engagement. We want to be a global leader in food sustainability. We want to drive sustainability improvement in Ireland. So this is a big program. It's a B2B program rather than a B2C program. So it's focused on trade, because we know that those buyers at those global companies, the Nestle's, the Crafts, the Unilevers, all of these companies, Procter & Gamble's, are all being targeted with sustainability. So we want to position our exporters that they can help those buyers achieve their sustainability targets because they're members of the Origin Green program. What it also means is that when our exporters are talking to these companies, they've got clear data points to talk to. They've got the language they can use, and they've got the key metrics they can share. So they don't have to create their own way of doing that. In terms of developing talent in our industry, we have a talent academy. And I'm a graduate of the Talent Academy. So 10 years ago, I've been dialing into you from Dubai, where I spent a year working for Irish companies, developing business opportunities for them. We run this in conjunction with some of our leading business colleges here in Ireland, in Dublin, we find that these people who we bring into these programs, who are typically from a food and drink background or a business background. My background is meat. I was a commercial manager in meat for a number of years. They then go and work in the food industry, bring in innovation, new thinking, structure, ambition to help drive on and bring us with some diversity into our industry as well. And I'm sure, because when I go around the world, we engage with a lot of different industries, and at times the food and drink industry, certainly in certain sectors, can be very male dominated and of a certain age. So we see it as important to introduce a lot of diversity, different perspectives into our industry, because ultimately our consumers are of all different types. So the people who are looking to sell to them or to develop business with them, we need to have that in our industry as well. Here's some of our current intake alongside our CEO. So at the moment, we have 5 Talent Academy programs running. We have our International Graduates program. They're people based in Dublin and in our international offices, working for Bord Bia. We have 19 Marketing Fellows. They're based all over the world, but they work on specific client projects. So typically a Marketing Fellow could be based in a market. So I'll give an example. We have a Marketing Fellow in Seoul, South Korea. He's got a project for a specific meat company. He's got a project for a specific dairy company, and he's got a project for a specific whiskey company. And he works Monday to Friday on those projects for those companies. And we subsidize that for those companies. So if a company wants to diversify, and diversification is very important, we're supporting them in that, but we're also training up these people in the hope that those companies will hire these people and bring that, that new invigoration into the industry. We have 10 Origin Green ambassadors. So Origin Green ambassadors are sustainability experts. And what they do is, instead of working for Irish companies, they go and work in international companies, usually in the sustainability department. And what they'll do is they'll bring best practice to that department. They will learn from that department. They will share with our exporting companies what that company is doing about sustainability. So for an example, a number of these Origin Green placements have been with British retailers working in meat supply chain or sustainability. And what they're seeing there is how these retailers think about sustainability, how they think about their supply chains, how to think about their stock holding, relaying that sort of knowledge and intelligence back to our exporters so they can better serve those retailers. We have 8 retail and food service providers. They typically work in supply chain roles, also with customers. and we have 15 people working in insights and innovation programs. And the reason that, and they work within Irish companies, and the reason they're so important is that, I suppose if you go back in the past, the Irish food industry, not unlike many other industries, was very much focused on efficiency. Efficiency at all costs, economies of scale. The more you can produce, the faster, the quicker, the better, and then worry about selling it afterwards. And our sense is that it's more important to think about what the consumer wants and to drive innovation to increase the value. So if you think about our role is to increase the value and get out of commodity, it's about understanding then what innovative products that customers want and having to develop those. So we felt that there was a lack of insights and innovation in our industry. So that's why that program was developed. So you can see there's sort of 5 different objectives there. The International Graduates is a graduate program. It's a support to our offices, and it's a step into the career in the food industry for many young people. Our Marketing to Fellows is very much marketing and business development for Irish client companies. Our Irish and Green Ambassadors is about understanding how big customers work, as is our Retail and Food Service Advisors. And our Insights and Innovation program is about developing that insights and innovation capacity in our industry to make them better at being consumer and customer focused. So in terms of how our industry is performing, 2019 was a record year for exports at 13 billion euros. Our key sectors were dairy at 4.4 billion, meat at just under 4 billion, prepared foods at 2.3 billion, alcohol at 1.5 billion, seafood and horticulture. Dairy, as Richard mentioned, is probably what we're best known for, but actually dairy only became our biggest export sector in the last 2 years as the EU dairy quotas were removed. And historically, at one point we were the beef promotion board only, and we've added all in. We've added in the dairy and added in the seafood and added in the beverages. But you're right, Richard, that the dairy has in recent years become particularly strong, and our strongest brands are undoubtedly on the dairy side. I'm sure Kerrygold is available across the UK and it's available everywhere. It's a great product. It's expensive but good. That's what we like. So our industry has grown, and what's driven that growth has been volume and value output. So we have increased the number of cattle we kill each year. We've invested in our dairy herd, and we've tried to put more value against that volume as well. So you can see we've been on a 25-year journey of increased export capacity, with a drop in 2008, 2009 due to the global financial crisis. I think it was expected we would drop exports due to Brexit. The big challenge we have in Ireland right now is is Brexit, coronavirus are the two big export challenges we have at the moment. But our industry, I suppose, has shown it's robust. Like I mentioned at the start of this presentation, it's an industry that's close to the heart of the nation, but perhaps became unfashionable. And I think when the global economic crisis hit in 2008, and jobs in Ireland were largely the fashionable jobs were in construction or banking. These jobs were shown to be less resilient, and a lot of people started to come back to the food industry, back to an industry that they felt had this resilience, had this strength, was always there, always on. So that's slightly changed the value we place on our food and drink industry, I think, 10 years ago. So if I just summarize, 67% of growth in the last 10 years, it's 5.5 billion euros additional. And of that 5.5 billion, almost half is going to markets outside of Europe. So like anywhere, you first begin to trade with your nearest neighbor. In our case, that's Britain. And at one time, I'm sure all of our exports went to Britain. And then as Britain became saturated, we looked to Europe, continental Europe, Ukraine, Central Europe, Eastern Europe, and then it goes out now. But what's really, I suppose, where we're seeing massive growth is from international markets, those markets outside of Europe. And in particular, I would say China has become a very important market for Ireland. At around, if all of our exports are 13, China is probably coming close to the billion, driven by dairy, pig meat, and in recent years, beef starts to come in as well, and seafood. And North America is the other big driver. And in particular on the dairy side, where you see some of our larger dairy companies have now invested in production in North America. And we've got big brands like Kerrygold available there. And on the other side, we've got a significant alcohol footprint into North America as well. Huge market for Irish whiskey. That's a sector that has seen huge investment as well. So we're in a relatively good position. Some of the challenges we have is that even though these exports are 13 billion, there are sectors that are challenged. So our dairy farmers have been doing okay, but we have had protests in the last couple of years from our beef farmers due to the prices available to them. Our pig meat farmers are doing quite well due to demand in Asia, and you're probably benefiting from that as well. The African swine fever issue in Asia is driving huge demand for proteins there, and our pig meat farmers are benefiting from that. And in fact, our beef farmers, albeit the price is low, are probably indirectly benefiting from that as well. So we have diversified. We're putting more into those markets, and I think that's the way it's going to be for the future, particularly as Britain becomes more and more challenged. We will see on January 1st how the tariff situation is. And we've got complications in that as an island nation. Much of our exports to continental Europe will go through the UK. So we've got to figure out how we're going to keep that alive. In terms of a bit of sectoral focus, so dairy, as I mentioned, it's actually 5.1 when I take our fat-filled milk powders from the prepared food sector. Our milk pool has grown to 8 billion litres. In 2014, it was 5 billion litres, and the European Union removed quotas, and the Irish farmers have been, I suppose, the ones to benefit from it. And the reason they've benefited is that we've always had this grass. So if you think of the investment they have to make, it's to buy more cows and buy more milking equipment, and they've done that. Our cows spend about 300 days a year outside, and 95% of their diet consists of grass, either grass directly from the ground or silage grass that's harvested during the summer months when we have an excess. Butter, cheese, infant formula is the large part of what we produce. We also produce a lot of skim milk powder, fat-filled milk powders, whole milk powders, and then functional ingredients as well. And dairy is probably our sector that's got the greatest global reach. You know, we've got strong markets in Asia, strong markets in North America, and strong markets in Europe. So it's a well diversified sector, I would say. Meat and livestock is a less diversified sector, particularly when you look at beef. So it's a 3.7 billion sector, of which just over 2 billion is beef. Largely our beef goes to Europe and the UK. So you'll find Irish beef in the top 3 retailers in the UK. It's in McDonald's, it's in Burger King. I think it's about 25% of all UK beef consumed is from Ireland. And then the lion's share of our beef that goes outside of the UK goes to Europe, you know, Holland, Germany, Italy, France, very, very important markets for Irish beef. We have been expanding our footprint outside of Europe. So like I mentioned, we got market access to China recently, and that's been working very, very well. But I think that the consumer for beef in Asia is a very different consumer than the consumer in Europe. And the cuts that they want is different to what the European consumer wants. So if you think about it, Europeans are eating a lot of steak meat, mince meat, and in Asia it's more about you know, those cuts that we don't eat, which is fantastic because it gives a better return on the side of a carcass. The downside is that should the European or UK market become more challenged, we don't have a very obvious next market outside of Europe. So the markets that are doing well for us are really Japan, Philippines, and China. We have got market access to the United States, but it's not taken off in the way I would have hoped personally. Pig meat then is about 900 million. Very UK focus on that as well, but China increasingly important. Very strong markets in China in the last 18 months to 2 years because of China's issues with African swine fever and the reduction in their production. Poultry, not a hugely important market. I mean, we do a bit into the UK. We consume a lot of poultry ourselves, and actually we import poultry. But we're starting to do some kind of premium ducks out to Asia as well. And then sheep meat is a UK and continental Europe focused sector, and we've got some excellent sheep meat. So beef, like I said, is kind of the emotive sector. It's the one when the prices are bad in beef. You know, our CEO is getting asked the tough questions on the news, and the farming media here, who are a strong lobby, will say, well, what are Bord Bia doing? You know, where's the money? I can't. You got to sort of, you know, that's my job comes under threat when the beef price is bad, and we've had some pretty volatile, you know, strikes outside meat factories and pickets, and just in the last couple of years, it's become quite a emotive, volatile sector, which is something I hadn't seen in a number of years. So we're under no doubt ourselves as an agency that we've got to support this sector. I should have mentioned so how we're funded. This is interesting, I suppose, when you're looking. This is the structural piece that you're interested in as well. We're funded by the Exchequer, so we're funded by the Irish taxpayer. Department of Finance through the Department of Agriculture onto ourselves funds, I think, about 60 million of our budget, but the balance is funded by industry levies. So every animal that's killed in Ireland, a contribution from the farmer through the factory goes to Bord Bia to support the marketing of that product. We also take a fund from the dairy industry, from the larger processors. They will they fund us to a significant amount as well. So we have got a duty of care to make sure. I know we're very conscious of providing value for money. We make sure that any investments we make that they're value driving, because we're very conscious of where our funding comes from. Actually, I should have mentioned, just and I didn't, but our dairy sector in terms of structure is largely a creamery style structure. So we have about 13 major dairy exporters. All of them are their setup is a creamery setup, so they're owned by the farmers, and we've seen a lot of consolidation in that sector with different dairy companies buying out others, mergers and acquisitions. And we also have a large trading house called Ornua, who you might be familiar with, who would previously have been known as the Irish Dairy Board. And they are actually funded by the creameries and serve as a sales agent for many of the more commodity-based products. They also own the Kerrygold brand that you'd be familiar with. So I should have mentioned that on the dairy slide. Beverages accounts for about 14% of our exports. So you're thinking Irish whiskey, Jameson, and all other brands, and then Irish cream liqueurs like Bailey's. So this is a strong sector that's seen huge investment in the last number of years. I think we've gone from 5 distilleries to we'll have 40 in a couple of years' time, and all over the country, driven by demand in North America, but increasingly demand across the world. So we do a lot into Russia via Latvia. We do a lot into Japan, but we're starting to do more into Japan, Australia, South Africa, all across Europe. So it's a growing market. And something that has seen a huge amount of investment in it. What's unusual, I suppose, is that the investment has come from people who traditionally aren't from the food and drink background. So you have to have 10 million to open a distillery. So there's a lot of people who are saying, I've made my money in tech, or I've made my money in construction. Maybe I'd like to have a distillery in my hometown. So there's a lot of that happening, which is fun. Prepared foods, about 10% of our exports, very much a UK focused sector. And this is where you see all sorts of branded FMCG products. Ready meals, frozen pizzas, confectionery, chocolate. Difficult sector right now, given it's Brexit coming down the tracks, and the sector has found it fairly difficult to diversify, because if you think about a lot of the products that are produced, Ireland is very close geographically to the UK, and was formerly a colony of the UK. And like to think of us as being very different. You think of ourselves as being very different to the UK. But in reality, as consumers, we're quite similar. We eat the same foods, we consume the same TV and media. So the products that we produce for export to the UK aren't products that particularly have a market in Holland or the Ukraine or Italy. It's not a simple transition. So what we're trying to figure out with our clients is how can we lessen the risk of Brexit on them by helping them prepare products that are more suitable for a wider and more diverse market. Seafood is 5% of our total exports. It's a sector that's limited by European quotas, so it rarely goes above kind of 500 million to 600 million. And we export a lot of all sorts, from premium shellfish, oysters, langoustines, brown crab, to hake, to cod, to pelagic fish, commodity pelagic fish in containers to West Africa and to Japan. And as you can imagine, it's an emotive sector as well. You can't move a seafood factory, you can't move a port. So when the prices aren't great for seafood, or if the markets aren't open, that has a direct implication on those ports where those fishermen live. And we're heavily reliant on the international market. 70% of what we export, of what we catch, is exported. We're not big consumers of seafood in Ireland, even though we live in an island. So we find that some of the products that we don't really value have a fantastic value elsewhere. So an example of that would be whelk. So whelk is like a little small sea snail, which we don't eat in Ireland at all, but we found really important market for it in Korea and other parts of Asia, where it commands a premium, and that's delivered some good returns back to our exporters. That was delivered by consumer insight. We found that gap. Edible horticulture, so you're thinking here is mainly mushrooms, potatoes, that kind of produce. It's only 2% of our exports, very much a UK focused product. A lot of it is mushrooms. So when Brexit happened in 2016, the mushroom sector was the one that really was called out as, this is the sector that could be annihilated. But there's been some excellent innovation in the sector. So I traveled to Abu Dhabi recently and went into a local corner shop, not a big shop, not in a high street or anything like that. And there was Irish mushrooms on the shelves commanding a premium, and Irish eggs sitting beside them. So I was kind of encouraged to see that. And we've seen innovation where they've started to add different functional ingredients to mushrooms, so omega-3 enhancing mushrooms, things like that. And that's it. That's the whistle stop of how we try and support Irish industry. My colleague Eve Heflin helped me with this presentation, so she's up there. But I very much welcome any questions, Colin, Richard, or from the wider audience in the call.
Super. First of all, many thanks, David. That was excellent, exactly what we were hoping for. I'll just, if I might just ask one question, then we'll come to the questions from the participants. So you took the words out of my mouth when you came back to the budget issue. It's unfortunately one of those things that we, have to focus on, particularly in current times. So you've mentioned that you have a state budget contribution as well as a contribution from the private sector, which is mandatory, as I understand it.
Yeah.
Does that mean that, for example, all your activities are also free to your clients? So your trade missions, your trade show participation and stuff like that. Perhaps you could just explain a little bit how those are financed, how they're organized, and how your activities fit into the market, if you like, for those sorts of services.
Yeah, very, very good question. It's a mixed response, actually, Richard.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you some examples. If we produce a report on the viability of the Ukraine beverages market, and I give that to industry, it's free of charge because it's to all.
Yeah.
If a specific exporter comes to me and says, I want to understand about, can you do me a specific report on the Ukraine beverages sector, and it's just for me, I would expect them to co-invest. So if something's for a wide audience, we would typically fund it. If something has a specific benefit to a specific company, there's a co-investment. So for our trade show participation, we would buy the stand, the 100 square meters, and we would sell off smaller portions of that stand to companies. So if you want 10 meters squared of our 100 meters squared, I don't charge it 10%. It's less than that. We subsidize it, but there is an investment requirement from the companies.
Mm-hmm.
If you come to me and say, I'm visiting Paris next week, and I want you to introduce me to a couple of buyers, I don't charge for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends. Generally, I don't like to give away anything that's substantial for free, out of principle, because if you want the service to be valued, the person who receives the service should have contributed. So trade missions, which is projects I deliver, I will typically charge a nominal fee for participation.
Mm-hmm.
So something like, if I'm taking a company to China for a week, I'm taking 20 companies to China for a week,
mm-hmm.
I'll charge them 500 euros per participant.
Mm-hmm.
Now they'll pay for their own flights, they'll pay for their own hotel, but after that and they pay for their own meals in market. But all the services I provide then, which are, the seminar, the transport, the visiting the stores, the visiting the factories, the banquets. If we have a banquet, if we have a promotion, an Irish food promotion while we're there, all of that, €500 doesn't come near covering the value of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But my view is, if we want the service to be valued, we want people to take it seriously, they've got to have some investment in it. So we do take investment from industry as well.
Super.
But it's a very good question. And like I said, I think it's about 10 million is our industry contribution to our annual budget at the start of the year,
Mm-hmm.
which is, and 60 million comes from the exchequer. So it's significant, but the lion's share comes from the exchequer.
Mm-hmm.
What I should point out is that because our investment comes from the government, and because Ireland is part of the European Union, a lot of our activities are limited
Mm-hmm.
are limited by what we can do within the parameters of Europe. So, for example, I can't promote Irish meat in Europe just because it's Irish.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say, come buy Irish beef, it's Irish.
Mm-hmm.
That's outside of the EU. The EU won't let me, which is fine. So I've got to find a different way to promote the Irish beef. So I might promote it as grass-fed, based
Mm-hmm.
on data, on sustainability, based on data, or I might ask the exporter to co-invest in the promotion. And if the exporter then co-invests in the promotion, it gives us more freedom as to how we can activate that promotion in the market.
Super. Thanks very much. I'll go to a question from Anastasia Normatova. She says, you can read the first question on the chat.
I can't. Oh, let me see. Where's the chat's gone? No, I can't see the chat. Oh, there.
Okay.
No, I have them now. So thank you, Anastasia. What activities do you export for promotion this year, considering COVID situation? Yeah. What tools for export? Okay. Yeah, very good question, Anastasia. So very different year. And actually some of the activities we've done have been better because of COVID. So I'll give you an example. In Italy, we would partner with wholesalers to promote Irish beef by doing activities with their salespeople. So if you think of these big wholesalers, they've got cash and carries all over the country. What we'll do is we might historically have done a demonstration. Here's the positive attributes of Irish beef. Here's how you sell Irish beef to your customers. And obviously we can't do that this year because we can't get people into a big room. But what we've done instead is we started to do virtual engagement. And what that has done is it's allowed us to hit more people than we would have. So in the old times, we've been limited physically by the size of a room. You can have 50 people maybe. Now I can hit 200 people through Zoom or through Teams or through whatever international portal. My own trade mission activity. So this week on Monday and Tuesday, I was due to travel to Philippines and Vietnam for a trade mission this autumn. That obviously was cancelled. But on Monday or Tuesday this week, I've been filming for a virtual trade mission with our ministers and our exporters. And instead of traveling physically to Vietnam and Philippines and maybe hitting 100 buyers, I'm doing 5 countries over 5 days and hoping to hit 250 buyers. So we've moved from physical to virtual. We don't know how successful that's going to be yet. I think it'll be successful. I don't think it'll be perfect. I don't believe that virtual is better than physical, but I think that we're getting better at virtual. I think the challenge is when you have someone physically in a room for an hour, tasting the product, smelling the product, speaking with the exporters, seeing it with their own eyes, you've got their attention span. When people are dialed in, and we all dial into lots of webinars, every day there's a webinar to dial into, you can get distracted and start clearing your emails or checking your social media or feeding the dog or the baby's crying, or it's a different world. But that's a very good question. And in terms of Anastasia, in terms of what tools for export promotion are most effective these days, one tool that I'm beginning to really embrace is the use of key opinion leaders in a market. So historically, we would have done marketing campaigns, advertorials in FMCG magazines. Now I'm encouraging my team to do more working with chefs, our mums, our those people who've got a reputation or a social media following to use our products to their consumers and drive demand at consumer level. So I suppose what I'm saying there is I'm moving largely to B2C rather than B2B, but using key opinion leaders. But thank you, Anastasia. Very good questions.
I'll just ask Olga's question to you as well, and then I'll pass to Colin. Olga asks, this is a translation from the Ukrainian. Do you work with consulting companies, and is it possible to get more information, familiarity with AKIS, A-K-I-S, which I think is an information system?
So on the first part of that question, we do. Yeah, we use consultants a lot. We use big consultancy companies, and then I use individual kind of freelancers depending on the market. Quite often where we don't have an office presence, I'll have a consultant there who works with me on a kind of 1 or 2 days a week or on a project base to approach. So an example would be in Japan. So we have an office in Japan, we have a manager in Japan, but he works with a guy who is 40 years working in the Japanese meat industry. And what he does there is he delivers market intelligence. He makes introductions. He physically introduces my manager to customers, which is an important way of working in Japan. So absolutely we use consultants. We also use PR agencies in larger markets where we have big marketing budgets. And yeah, consultants are an important part of what we do. We call them feet on the street. So our in-market experts, boots on the ground, and yeah, very much so. The AKIS part of your question, Olga, I'm afraid I don't understand, or I'm not familiar with AKIS.
The AKIS, I've also just
it's an abbreviation for agricultural
information system. Innovation systems. It's a we'll find out some more information and post it on our website, Olga. I think that's unless
well, what I would say, just based on that interpretation, we have a sister agency called Teagasc, T-E-A-G-A-S-C. They're an Irish, it's an Irish word, and if our job is to market Irish food, their job is to innovate within our food production industry, both at primary levels. So in terms of helping farmers to produce better animals or better produce, but also helping companies produce innovative products. So they would have investments in sort of food production technology. So if a company has an idea of a product they think there might be a demand for, they can trial it with Teagasc, produce small batches with Teagasc, test the market before they make that big investment themselves. So Teagasc are part of our eco-structure. We have sort of two different agencies that work alongside us. So Teagasc are the production side and the innovation, research and development side. Enterprise Ireland are, I suppose what their role is, they will help you invest in your own production infrastructure. So they're very much on that side of things. And then we're on the find a market for it. So if you think how it could work is using Bord Bia's market intelligence, we go to Ukraine and we see that there's this fantastic new product or demand for something in the Ukraine, and we go, well, exporters, you should be producing this X product. They qualify the opportunity and they go to Teagasc and say, I wonder how can we produce this? Teagasc showed them how they could produce it, and then Enterprise Ireland helped them with their investment in their infrastructure to allow them to produce it on a broader scale. So we all work hand in glove together, and Enterprise Ireland will also work on foreign direct investment. And we see some international companies investing in food production in Ireland as well. So, so from R&D to production to marketing, that's the three agencies.
Super. In fact, we talked earlier this week to Teagasc, so we had some good information about that. And to Olga, yeah, we'll follow up the question on AKIS directly. Over to Colin maybe for a question.
Thanks, David. That was an excellent presentation, and in fact, you've already answered my question. I was going to ask you with the level of cooperation with Teagasc. Teagasc, which is the Agricultural and Food Development Authority, would actually be the source for the previous request for agricultural knowledge information systems.
Brilliant.
In terms of research and development, both for crop research and dairy research and product research. product development. So you've answered that question.
Good.
Perfect. That's good.
Yeah, there's actually, Richard, there's actually superb opportunity in Ukraine to develop their agricultural sector and also to increase the consumption, in Ukraine of agricultural and dairy products.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the contacts that we're starting to establish between Ireland and Ukraine hopefully will develop in mutual trading opportunities, as well as knowledge exchanges. So we'll definitely work in that direction, and we'll also hope when in better times to bring a team from Ukraine over to Ireland to maybe meet you face to face.
We'd be delighted. We'd be delighted to show you around our office and how we can show you some better visual representation of how we support Irish client companies.
Super. Good. I don't think we have any other further questions from participants. So at this stage, I'd just like to do a quick marketing moment of my own. On November the 17th, we're talking to Mr. Flanagan from the Irish Cooperative Organisation. On November the 18th, we're talking to Mr. Bell from the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine. And on the 24th, we're talking to Ornoa, the Kerrygold brand, so private sector representative. Invitations for those meetings will be going out in due course, and we look forward to seeing everybody then. At this stage, I'd just like to, again, thank David. That was really, really excellent. If anybody has any questions which occur to them subsequently, please send them to us. And if David's happy, we'll forward them on. Just to say that with your permission, David, we'd like to translate the presentation and put it on our website, as well as the recording of this event.
No problem.
And to just lastly to thank everybody for participating, and we look forward to seeing as many of you as possible in our upcoming events. Thanks again, and with that we'll close today's event.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Richard, and thanks everybody. Have a nice weekend.
Okay, and you take care. Thanks.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.